Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bengal Tiger Podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Shea Dixon. We had some breaking news this morning. Shea rolled out of bed, and at about 7:30 a.m., it was reported that LSU defensive line coach Bo Davis was going to be hired by Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints to be their defensive line coach, and the reports were accurate. And now LSU is once again looking for a new defensive line coach. How you doing, Shea?
I am ready to dive back into what was a kind of quiet February because it is a recruiting dead period and
Yeah.
there were no, major offseason changes. LSU had to find a new tight ends coach and we thought that might be about it after Brian Kelly replaced everybody on defense a year ago. And then you run into the situation with Bo Davis getting the Saints job. For those that don't know, Bo Davis, one of the most respected developers of talent in college football coaching. He's from the old tree. He was with Saban forever. He spent time in the NFL with the Lions, but he's from McGee, Mississippi, and went to LSU. Got his first job with LSU after playing at LSU, doing as a GA. I think he might have been in the strength department, but and then went off and did his coaching career. And now at the very tail end of it, it feels like came back home to LSU. He's got a kid at Southeastern, a lot of families still in Mississippi. So it felt like this would be it. And Matty B simultaneously put an end to what's been a run since 2014 of every single year. LSU's had a different person coaching the D line for one reason or another, whether it was coaching changes. Dennis Johnson, who's now the Ravens D line coach, blew out both of his knees in fall, before fall camp. Obviously, there was Jimmy Lindsey, who came down with a medical diagnosis that kept him out of the entire season when he got hired. So we're now going from 2014 with Brick Haley to Ed Orgeron. Then Ed Orgeron takes over as the head coach the middle of that 2016 season. And every year since then, it's been somebody different. Pete Jenkins, Dennis Johnson, Bill Johnson. And that was when we thought it was going to be Dennis Johnson for back-to-back years. He gets injured. They bring in Bill Johnson and promote him to on-field D-line coach. Andre Carter. Then the Kelly era begins, Matty B, and it's Jamar Cain. Then Jamar Cain goes to the pros. There was this whole Matt House, Jamar Cain kind of
Yes.
heated
Yep.
debate going on. They hired Jimmy Lindsey. Matt House gets not only booted, but Jimmy Lindsey before the year, like I said, um, has a tough medical kind of run
Health
in that
scare.
keeps him off the field, right? And he's doing well now and is back in coaching, but was at LSU, and because of that, Brian Kelly moved John Jancic, just a defensive long. I mean, he's been a DC in the SEC before, but was one of your shadow guys, right? Or however you want to
Hmm.
describe them, your analysts, your senior staff that are off-field guys who are knowledgeable and help out. And Brian Kelly said he's never coached D line, but that's who we're gonna have to put him there. And then you hire Bo Davis, and it felt like an alum. He's at the back end of his career. He's from Mississippi. This is where he went. Like, you've got the stabilization now. And from talking to a couple people who are close to Bo this morning, it was that feeling of there was only one job in the NFL that could come open where he'd be like, yeah, okay, all right, I'll take a pay cut and go there because now it's just 60 miles down the road. Like, it doesn't change anything with having a kid at Southeastern or family in McGee, Mississippi, or, being from LSU and now making the move over to the Saints. And look, hey, it's a pro job at a time when a lot of guys who have been in the college game, Matty B, for more than 30 years, grinding on the recruiting trail, now have to deal with NIL and official visits are seemingly all year long. And it's just a different game. And I think when you get there's 32 NFL D line jobs out there. When you get offered one and it's 60 minutes down the road, it's pretty hard to say no. So I would bet that just from hearing people who are close to him and what they've said, it's a tough decision, yes, but that's a really nice opportunity to jump back in the NFL, be a D line coach, and not have to worry about the recruiting aspect and everything else that comes with it. And you would think, and then I'll get off my soapbox here, or at least my rundown of what's happening, that the hire of Kellen Moore and this new staff, which includes LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier's dad, as one of the key pieces on offense, that they've got some years bought in, right? Like Bo Davis will get this job and he can hold on to it until, at least a few years and then maybe be done or we'll see. But uh, I think this will probably be his final stop in coaching, unless it's somehow to come back to LSU. I think with just where he's at in his career, this is familiar to him, and geographically in the NFL and kind of where college is going for an older guy, the Saints makes perfect sense. Look, I can't blame him one bit. I can completely see where he's coming from here.
Yeah, and Kellen Moore also hired, Terry Joseph, Louisiana native from Texas, hired him away from Texas. So this is now the second, big time position coach that Kellen Moore has poached from a couple SEC schools here. You mentioned getting Nussmeier over from the Eagles and so on and so forth. So definitely interesting attrition because of the Saints and the NFL, kind of poaching a couple college SEC coaches. As far as Bo, you kind of mentioned it, but it will be a pay cut because he was the highest paid defensive line coach in the country. He was making $1.25 million from LSU. That's how LSU got him to come from Texas initially. Initially, there was some hesitation, I guess, on Bo Davis, and LSU was just like, how much will it take? And they reached the number. They ended up getting him, and it was such a big deal because, like you said, because of all the inconsistencies, because of all of the turnover that you have year over year, even before Kelly, just like it felt like with the defensive line, they could never get their footing in recruiting and just with the unit. And it always felt like even when you had talent with that year with Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith in them, it just goes downhill because, like you said, Coach Lindsey ends up having a health scare and you don't have a D-line coach. So it feels like they can never quite hit the right equation with talent and coaching at LSU in terms of defensive line over the past decade.
Yeah.
And it feels like another hiccup and another big time piece that Brian Kelly will have to replace. And something that we were hoping, that all LSU fans were hoping, is that, all right, just return this defensive staff and we'll go from there. Now, most of it is intact. Yes. The big pieces are. But I think Bo Davis was a significant piece, especially when considering who he has brought in and the development that this room needs, and the fact that he is the best, if not one of the best, developers of talent in terms of defensive line in the entire country. So, like, I completely believe, and it is not surprising at all that he's not a big fan of, the NIL landscape or whatever else in terms of just the stress of recruiting time and time and time again. Because he is such a good developer of talent, I could see him just being like, hey, just give me some players and I'll go make the best of them at the NFL, whatever. So it's not shocking to me, but ultimately it is a significant blow for Brian Kelly and LSU, who now have to replace a coach in the middle of spring practices.
Yeah, look, and I've got some tidbits coming on the Bengal Tiger. It's $1 for your first week right now. I think it's the promo for this month, but um, look, less than the cost of your average subscriptions out there, and I promise you'll use it a ton because we hang out on the message board all day, and this has been plenty of the chatter. I'd say dominated 90% of the board today is the Bo Davis news. I will say this too, and like I said, I have some tidbits coming on how this unfolded behind the scenes, how quickly they might spring into action. Spring practice starts on March 8th, I believe. Like, will they have someone hired before then? Who are some guys to keep an eye on? Who not to keep an eye on?
That would be an
Maybe,
impressive turnaround if they.
maybe more importantly, is who kind of some guys I can eliminate. But I'll put that in the tidbits on the board. But I do, from speaking with sources, they've known about this for a few days. Bo Davis obviously let them know, hey, look, I've got this job offer, mulls it over. You have agents involved, all that. But at this level, I mean, you've got GMs. They've had Austin Thomas, but we're seeing it now at every college. Oklahoma hiring Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl, who kind of ran things there forever to be their GM. You've got you've got a list of candidates at every position, right? That, hey, if a guy were to leave, this is what we would do, or this is who we'd like to go after. When you've also then got a few day head start on it, we're hearing of the news now. they are 72 hours ahead of us. And that's a long time in the coaching world where you're making these phone calls. And if a guy's interested and you can set it up, and as you pointed out, he was already the highest paid D line coach out there. Like they'll spend the money. We've seen Scott Woodward. He will spend the money and give the money to football. And Brian Kelly will spend the money, just like Ed Orgeron and Les Miles did, to hire top coaches. Like Blake Baker is the highest paid DC, unless someone just got a new contract and uh, is higher than he was a year ago, Matty B. So like when it comes to setting that bar, it's kind of like NFL quarterback contracts. Like LSU's never behind on that. They don't waffle on it. They go for it. So I don't think anyone here is like completely off limits. I do think there's guys that will be mentioned that are probably have better jobs right now where they are than being just a D line coach at LSU. But I do want to dive into the reality of, and this is something that wasn't the case previously. Blake Baker's defense has a defensive ends and edge coach and a defensive line coach, which is really your interior guys. That's who Bo Davis was, charged with coaching up and developing and everything, and was only here for a year. But Kevin Peoples got a ton out of Braden Swinson. Savion Jones looked way better than he did the year prior. The backups all looked good. Went out and signed a nice class. We've seen him active on the recruiting trail right now. And this all comes in the 13 months after we find out, hey, look, LSU's bringing Blake Baker back to be the new DC from Missouri, where he was the DC there. And he's bringing this guy, Kevin Peoples, with him, who everybody loves, evidently, as a D ends and edge coach. And he's been great. So there's not this wholesale feeling of like every D lineman and D end and edge rusher now doesn't have their coach. It's your D tackles, your interior D linemen, your, the two guys, what really Don McKinley, Guillory, Ahmad Bro, all of those guys that, you're now focused on getting that new coach in for. I just think there is, at least here's the silver lining in Baker's scheme or how he assembles the staff. The D line room split basically in half, and
Mhm.
that other half is just still rolling with the same continuity.
Yeah, so for spring ball, I would expect, Peoples to do a lot of the hands-on for the entire defensive line, unit, edges, and interior, and then I'm
And
sure they
unless
have.
they have a hire before then.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if they hire
That's
before and
that
get them in and
if they hire in the next 8 days, that means that.
oh, yeah, like, during this yeah, I keep thinking of, like, the March 8th, like,
Oh, yeah,
starting
okay,
point, but
so,
yeah,
like,
they could get them
well,
in.
let's say it's March 8th and they've had a head start, so it's about 11 days. It wouldn't be a shock if between 10 and 14 days they were able to secure a new coach because we are out of NFL, playoff
Yeah.
season or any of that, and we're out of bowl season, so.
Yeah, I'm at the getting him here and getting him on the field and stuff like that. I was like, if he just flies in and starts coaching ball, then sure. I was like, okay.
Oh, as
Regard
in okay,
Yeah,
as
as
in
in, like, on
people
the
will
field for
help kind of
spring.
bring things along.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But regardless, like, analysts and whatnot will all be present. We know how
Blake
important analysts
Baker, yeah,
are. Blake
everybody.
Vick will be in. So I will say this is a significant position for this defense that we've talked about time and time again because of the development needed and because whether it's McKinley, Bro, they added Sadir Mitchell from Texas. Then you add, I don't know which of these freshmen are early enrollees. I don't know if any of them are or if Zion is or something like that. But regardless, it's a unit that doesn't have a ton of numbers this spring because Guillory's still out. And because some of the freshmen are not early enrollees, you have Sean Washington as well. But still, the development aspect of it is important. So I do think there's some value in these, 15 practices of the spring that we'll have to see how it unfolds.
Let's get a quick ad read in, and I'll give some thoughts on the back end of this Bo Davis discussion. Each week, at My Perfect Franchise with Andy Luedecke. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it right there. Andy is a franchise consultant. He's been a franchisee. He's been a consultant for a couple of decades now, owns franchises, and also has put hundreds of, I'll say it, thousands actually, of people into business, starting a business or starting to get into a franchise and opening their own or joining in with one with other partners, whatever it might be. He's helped them out along the way. And what he does for On3 and the Bengal Tiger is everything's completely free. Any question you might have, everything that would come along the way, if you follow through on it about what's out there. Here's, I'm looking for a second job or a new job, or um, uh, I've got this side hobby. I want to make more out of it, or I'm interested in leaving, this franchise and jumping to a new one, but I don't know how to do it. He can walk you through everything. He then puts you, uh, gives you the knowledge, but also all the information to then get with that, sets up meetings with those, whatever company it is that might be a good fit with you, and then kind of walks you hand in hand all the way across the finish line. And then that company, who would then, if you get a franchise with, become a franchisee, would then kick back some money to Andy. So you never owe him anything. And the other good part of this is on that kickback, Andy is now going to donate to baseball NIL. He feels like it's his passion, college baseball. Full disclosure, he is living around Austin, is a Texas Longhorn fan, but from our many talks over the years, he's got all the respect in the world for LSU baseball, and he thinks that the baseball players don't get that same NIL kind of attention that a lot of other sports do, namely football, but even more so that in a time when numbers are being crunched, Matty B scholarship wise, baseball was already on the short end of it, where guys are on a quarter scholarship and a
Yeah.
half a scholarship or
Mhm.
whatever it might be. So you're supporting LSU NIL if you support Andy, and you also can perhaps find what it is you're looking for with jumping into that next line of work or kind of deviating from what you're doing now, whatever it might be. So give them a call, 404 973 9901. It's 404 973 9901. Or Andy, ANDY, at myperfectfranchise.net is his email. So, or Google it, My Perfect Franchise. You can go read about it yourself. Um, all right, here's my other thought. And again, I feel even after talking about it, I feel better if I'm an LSU fan that my edges and my stand up rushers, my ends and my stand up rushers are good to go, being coached by the same guy and Kevin Peoples, who is very well respected, largely because Matty B, that whole staff got fired last year. So, like,
Yes.
have to have some, like, we can go on with this, like, insane run of 10 years, a decade of a new D line coach each year, but you don't want to do that with your whole staff, basically. So, fortunately for them, their DN and edge coach is still there in Kevin Peoples, and everybody's a fan of him. With what they've spent on coaches, I have no reason to believe they won't go out and get someone who is more than qualified to do this job. And you want to find, and I'm interested to see how it goes, that balance of recruiter coach. Like Bo Davis is in his mid 50s. I mean, he's been coaching since, pull up a minute, 1995, first job, LSU GA. It's 30 years ago. Like you could understand with the current NIL era why a guy like that, it's like, hey, look, I've got this opportunity to coach right down the road for the Saints in the NFL and
Yeah.
work 7 months a year. Basically, I'm in, even if it's a pay cut. But I think that maybe with this comes someone who is more of maybe of the Jamar Kane kind of ilk of recruiting and a good coach or young coach, someone who can develop, or is it someone Matty B who is that kind of big name that a splash like Bo Davis was, not even with the LSU connections, just the respect he has as a coach. I don't know. I think it'll probably be a blend, though, is my guess, because they can afford to go out and pay it.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be hard to find someone that has a resume that compares to Bo Davis in terms of the development of players that he's, he's built up and put in the NFL and so on and so forth. So you counter that, I think, with, like you said, the recruiting acumen you hope of someone else. If it is a younger person, more energy in the recruiting trail, and a guy who kind of blends well with a Blake Baker, who obviously is high energy and obviously wants to get after the quarterback and so on. This is going to be, whoever takes this job is going to be getting a defensive tackle room, and we'll see what they do in the spring, but getting a defensive tackle room that's kind of pieced together, young, obviously a very young room that will need energy, will need development. So I don't want to forego the development aspect of it. I just think it's going to be hard to find a guy of Bo Davis's caliber in terms of guys that have put 3 stars, and made them play at a championship level consistently. So with that being the case, I do think I agree. I think you're going to have
Yeah,
to
there's
find a
not many
blend.
Bo Davises out there who have the
Yeah.
Saban tree
Yes, you got to
to.
find the next great coach. That's what the hard part is of being a great program, is that you're going to get coaches poached every single year because they are good and you're a good program. And how do you supplement that? That's what all coaches at every level of every sport have to figure out. is how do you replace great assistants, and
To-
that's what's going to be the key.
I'll give that thought. I'll share one thing quickly because I know people were probably thinking it when we were talking about recruiting and guys that he had signed. If guys like he had just signed a handful of this class, including a couple guys who were committed to him at Texas, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, were they just coming here for Bo Davis? Are they going to hit the portal? Like, I have no idea. It's a tale as old as time that coaches leave. So usually you want to commit to a school beyond just that position coach, even if that position coach is a major factor, like a Frank Wilson would be, or a Corey Raymond, or whomever it is. That's a wait and see because no kid's going to bail until they find out who the new coach is. So I'd put that one on the back burner. As you said, Brian Kelly's been around for a long time now, and he's in win now mode. We saw it with the portal. We saw him with this $1 million match. We see it with how across his career, he's hired DCs extremely well. I think that Blake Baker is one of the best DCs out there when you talk about those young up and comers who are kind of the next household name. Were no complaints about the defensive staff. Like everyone thought that was a home run. Wow, you were able to assemble this group and get it done and make a couple of them the highest paid guys at their position in college football. And Corey Raymond's probably up there too. That's a big deal. So I don't. And then you look on offense, like Sloan moved up and they kept rolling. Like Nuss looked, the offense did not take some massive drop off, and now he's being hyped as a preseason Heisman front runner. And Brad Davis is one of the best O-line coaches out there. Frank Wilson's one of the best recruiters and running back coaches out there. Cortez Hankton certainly is the guy who garners a lot of attention both at the NFL and college levels thanks to his time at Georgia and LSU. You just go out and replace Slade Nagel, who leaves to be the Houston OC for Willie Fritz, Matty B, and you get Alex Atkins, a guy who was an OC a year ago and was talked about as like that next big up and comer before Florida State flatlined and went 0-12, and they made staff change, or 1-12, whatever it is.
2-10, I thought it was bad.
And they make their staff changes. But my point being, I don't
Yeah.
like with Austin Thomas, you've got a GM who knows what he's doing and has been around. You've got Scott Woodward, who's got an open checkbook for football. You've got Brian Kelly in win now mode. You've got guys like Frank in the building, and certainly Blake Baker, who are going to have a hand in saying, or at least like an opinion of, I think this is a good fit. I like this, whatever. I don't think you're going to get across that many people without this being a good hire. Like it's going to be someone that's going to fit and won't be like, wow, that's very underwhelming and it didn't work out. I just cannot see that happening at where they're at right now with expanded playoffs, NIL, the rev share coming. Like,
Yes.
you can't, there's no margin for error.
No.
And they're in like win now mode. We saw it with the portal and with high school recruiting. I mean,
yes,
it took Michigan, a top 5 richest person in the world, to come out and take Bryce Underwood away. Like they have stepped up in a major, major way. I would have to think the same remains if you only have one opening on the field that you're going to go out and hire somebody for.
Yeah. And it is good in that respect that a lot of jobs have settled down. So you're not going to be bidding against another team or something like that. I mean, besides maybe the NFL. But yeah, I think the urgency is at an all-time high, especially at this position. We've seen time after time after time the past, I mean, really ever since football was invented, but defensive tackle is an absolute must-have. You have to be at least serviceable at that spot, I think, to compete for a championship. And LSU has some talent to be serviceable there. I just think you're going to have to develop it, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they went and got another player out of the portal in the spring. We've talked about it. It's not a great situation. You don't want to go into it because we saw last year what it ended up being. But even if you can add a JVR Suggs, Gio Paez, something like that out of the portal, I think it would do wonders for this group just to add depth and add another name there. That's a whole different podcast. We don't have to get into it, but it speaks to the point of urgency, and it speaks to the point that whoever they hire has to come in and get to work immediately. And so, yeah, maybe they are there on March 8th. They need to get to work, whoever it is.
Well, shout out to everyone for sticking with us through this pod. Our little bit of a breaking emergency pod. We didn't plan to talk about Bo Davis today, but we had to. And look, best of luck to Bo, LSU alumnus. He came home. Then he gets kind of, as I said, that one job offer that he would really entertain that would be at the NFL level because it's only an hour down the road. So Boy, there are some Saints fans or LSU fans that are very, very upset. They'll cool off, I think.
Are
LSU.
the Saints done hiring people because they keep taking Louisiana natives out there
Good.
and
I need to
SEC
check that.
people?
It's a good point.
So we need to
Um,
make sure that they're all done before we wrap this up here.
they won't draft any LSU players, but they'll take their coaches. It's a brutal world out
And a
there.
tank for Nuss next year.
That would be like an inside job. You can't do that. It's like
I was
insider
gonna
trading. You
say
can't do that. Not when your OC is his father and walking him through the process.
that would be funny. But a Nussmeier Saints jersey, that would be
You just get
something.
one made, even if he goes to Carolina or
Okay, yeah. I mean, but I'm saying
Seattle. It doesn't matter. Just get one made.
I'm just saying that'd be hard. All right.
All right. Well, so to break it down in a fan's perspective, this sucks,
Yes.
but it's not the end of the world. It's one guy. They've shown they'll go. It's one position, right? It's not like, oh gosh, we got to go out and find 5 new coaches like it was a year ago, and I hope we hit on these guys, and they did. But it's one spot. Your D line's already split up between 2 groups and 2 coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, you're out of the NFL season, you're out of the bowl season. Like, find your guy, go out there, get him. If you don't, get your second guy, whatever it is. I think this happens rather quickly, and spring ball will be upon us. I think they'll be
Yeah.
fine. It does suck though. You would have liked to have the
Yeah.
continuity of Bo Davis.
Yeah, it's not a season-ending thing. It is not a like, oh, whoa, wow, you dropped their win total by freaking a game or two. Like this is something you should be able to overcome. This is something that all programs have to go through over the offseason. Like again, this is a little late, later than what you'd like, but all programs have to go through this, and you just keep rolling in good assistance. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll be around. We'll do another podcast before spring ball, probably a spring ball preview before it starts up on March 8th. And then we're into the spring just like that. So, yeah, thank you all for joining us. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. And check us out on the Bengal Tiger On3. Come subscribe and come join us over there where we have a great community. So, for Shea Dixon, I'm Matthew Brune. We will talk to y'all later.